Hey
Jason,
Kevin.
how we doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good. Oh man, I feel like this week has just flown by. Halloween, end of month. I mean, just exciting times overall. How you doing?
So what's Halloween like for you? Do you go trick-or-treating still? Do you have kids that go trick-or-treating? Do you give out candy? Do you leave the lights off? Like what's your what do you do?
Oh, so we this year was a lot different because we have a little one now. She's
Okay.
4 months old, Zoe.
Oh
Shout
yeah,
out
that's right.
Zoe.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, so she's not necessarily trick or treating, but I mean, obviously, we're just gonna eat it up. So we walked around, had a beer, maybe a couple of beers, and we just walked around and enjoyed it. And saw it. So it was a really very chill, low key Halloween. But yeah, we definitely have candy though that we leave out in the doorstep, and we just leave it there for them to
Oh,
get and go. But yeah,
oh,
it's
you're
a good
so
time.
nice. I
Yeah.
am
How about
kind
you?
of weird, like antisocial on Halloween. The front porch light is definitely off. Halloween. I'm like,
Oh,
and
really?
we have a dog too. So and the dog is like, Pepe, he's like he barks every time people knock on the door. So I'm like, yeah, we're not gonna do
Oh,
that.
yeah. Pepe, I have a guy named Bowser, so he's the very much same way. So Pepe and Bowser would get along. They definitely are yeah,
Yeah.
very similar in that sense for sure. Well, Jason, super excited to have you back. I mean, this is awesome. So
Yeah.
everyone joining, welcome. Say hello in the chat. Say what you were for Halloween, what'd you do for Halloween, favorite I don't care. Like blow it up in there. Let's get it really kicked off. But welcome to the 5 cold call formulas that won't make you sound like a telemarketer. My name's Jack. I'll kick things off. We're really excited to have y'all. I'm the SDR leader at Mixmax. I've been in sales 7 years. I don't know. I'm losing count, honestly, but been in sales all I can remember, been an SDR. I'm really passionate about the SDR role and cold calling especially. So super excited to get into it with y'all today. And yeah, just kind of really just get into the nitty gritty of how to be super successful in cold calling. Jason, I'll throw it over to you. Introduce yourself.
My name's Jason. I run a company called Outbound Squad. So our mission is to help reps turn complete strangers into paying customers. So if that's SDRs making cold calls or account executives doing self sourcing and discovery and demos, how do we uh, how do we get strangers to want to talk to us? Because most people are pretty averse to talking to salespeople. So, what are some of the soft skills? We're going to dig into a lot of them today. My first sales job was going door to door selling house painting services in 2008. That's what I did in college. So, some of those same principles, honestly, when you're at someone's door talking to them, it's the same kind of stuff that you're going to use when you get people over the phone. So, I'm excited to dig in, man.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I feel like my first job really, I mean, selling job, it was in advertising and it was Yelp sales. So hashtag Yelp fam, if y'all are out there, definitely let me know. But yeah, really got introduced to it super early on. And so calling is very dear to my heart. It's a really important skill. I'm super a huge advocate for it. So excited to get into it with you today and really just get into the tips and tricks, what's working in today, what's going to make you the most successful, get into all that. I'll go through a quick breakdown of what we're going to cover. So we're going to go through setting the proper stage for cold calling success first. The next thing we're going to get into is first impression. So how do you sound legit? How do you actually handle early resistance? Followed by engaging and building quality rapport. What does that look like? Overcoming common objections that all of us are going to get hit with, no matter what industry you're selling into. Lastly, follow up, best practices, aka ask for the meeting when it comes to it. And then we'll get into the Q&A session. We'll try to keep at least 5 minutes, maybe even a little more at the end. So if you have questions that come across, don't hesitate. Fill them up in the chat, which shout out to Rita, our moderator, and also the secret behind today's webinar. We would not be on
Yeah.
this call if it wasn't for her. So big shout out to Rita. But also too, another really important one to cover because we get hit with this a lot. There will be a recording. So if we go fast, we're just in the heat of
Yeah.
it. Me and Jason, we love it. Don't worry, you're gonna get a recording automatically sent to you. No problem. Um, cool. So before we get really into it, Jason, always like kicking these off with a little question for the crowd, at least. How many cold calls is everyone making every week? And be honest, y'all, we're all here to get better. So how many cold calls are you averaging every week? So Jason, I want to get your opinion on this. I feel like it's always different, but how many cold calls is really, a good average, or is there a secret to how many cold calls a rep should be averaging every week?
I mean, if you're an SDR or a BDR, you should probably making over 100 calls a week, at a minimum. Even as an account executive, if you want to self-source, I mean, unless you have a dialer, which I highly recommend that you get a dialer, if you can, it's dude, 100 calls a week is less, it's 20 calls a day. That takes less than an hour to do when only one of those people are going to pick up.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm a really big proponent of you got to work that activity at the top of the funnel in order to produce the result that you want. So,
Yeah.
most people are probably making, I guess the short answer is most people are probably making less calls than they should.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And so, okay, we'll call it there. Rita, if you can end. So it looks like with let's see. So we have a good majority of people, they're making over 100 per week. So there we go. We're off to a really good start. Love it. But a good majority after that, 10 to 50, and then less than 10. So definitely some work to do there. But obviously, I feel like I'm on the same realm as Jason. I just feel like if you're an SDR, it's obviously the more opportunities you're giving yourself, the better results you're going to get. So more the better. 100 a week, when you really dumb it down and break it down, that's not too much to ask, 20 calls a day. So, but when it comes down to that, I always like getting into setting the right objectives and pre-call prep before you really start making your cold call sessions. So I'll kick this off, Jason. All right, I have a lot of thoughts with calling, but I think a lot of the
Yeah.
times when it comes down to it, I often catch my reps and even just people I talk with, they get so caught up in the end result of what a cold call may result to in booking meetings. So it's like, oh yeah, I just want to book meetings. I think what I always tell them, I mean, obviously, duh, yeah, you want to book a meeting, but what comes first? To me, it's that conversation. It's building that quality, authentic conversation. And I think you and I were talking about this ahead of time, and I loved it. You brought up like this really typical relationship between the prospect and seller. Can you explain that to the crowd? What you
Yeah.
have found?
Yeah. So before we get into any kind of tactics, which we have a lot to share around how to open the call and all that kind of stuff, is you should get really clear on the objective. And like you said, if the objective is to land the meeting, there's some unintended consequences from that. One of them being that it's going to sound very desperate. And it's going to put you in a position where when you do get someone on the phone, they're going to be able to tell that you can want something from them. So in order to like really make some good progress on our calls, like we really need to think about what's under our control. And the thing that's under our control is to try to break that dynamic between buyer, one that normally runs away from salespeople, and seller, the one that usually chases. So this chase and run away, let's break that dynamic and have an authentic conversation. So when we get someone to pick up the phone, let's just make the goal, how can I have an authentic, genuine conversation with this person? And if it makes sense, we'll schedule a meeting. Because the number one challenge and obstacle that you have in a cold call is that 80% of them don't get past the first 60 seconds. So you
Yes.
have to break through and show that, hey, I'm not a salesperson that's trying to sell you something literally right now over the phone or upgrade your car warranty. Nothing against the people that do that. Like you're trying to show them that, hey, I did some research. I'm a trusted advisor.
Yep. Yep. I 100% agree. And I think that's one thing that I always tell my reps and everyone is, hey, meetings are going to come. Trust me, they're going to come. I want you to focus on talking to people,
Yeah.
conversating, building up that. And how do you get there? We'll get into it. There's a lot of different tactics. We'll get into it much more down the road, but it's just setting that right objective and making it simpler. Really just talking to people, building it up. And when you do get a connect, don't think about getting the meeting. Just get them talking, get them actually opening up to you and breaking that barrier down. Because, like Jason said, everyone's on defense mode. No one likes to be sold to. So, and you don't want to be that kind of seller. You want to just be someone that's really wanting to learn from them. And then if it really makes sense, yeah, I love that. Jeff, I just saw that. Practice empathy. Be empathetic. That's perfect. Love that. But I also like this too, and shameless plug, I got to do it. But when it comes to before you really start making your calls, make sure your tech and solutions around you are really working in your favor. So how are you going to get there? How are you going to make sure those conversations are really going to come? And that's where you got to make sure your setup is in your hands. And I think that's one thing my team is really fortunate to have is we're selling a tool that to our prospects that we're actually using every single day. So for me, whether it's you're an AE on this call or on this webinar, you're in Gmail, you're trying to follow up with your prospects, like Mixmax is a tool, it's a sales engagement solution that is going to be with you no matter where you are, whether you're in Gmail and you need to make your dials, you need to make sure you're accessing Salesforce or your CRM information as quickly as possible. You're an SDR, you're in the engagement platform managing your tasks, which I know it's a lot to handle at times. Mixmax is going to make sure you're there and covered every base of the way. So something to really take into consideration before you start really drilling down and making your calls, make sure your tech is really working in your favor. Do you agree with that, Jason? Do you ever catch that with teams that they just kind of get super focused on dials and they don't really
I
consider this?
I love how you work this in too, dude. This is great stuff,
I
man.
tried, it's always hard when you're plugging your product, but I really tried. And I think it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Oh no, it does. I mean, that's one of the things I love about Mixmax is that, if I have to go click through 4 or 5 other tabs to go do something and work in a different platform for this, and I can't do it where I'm at, part of increasing your call activity is just removing the number of steps you have to take in order to conduct and execute a quality prospecting activity, calling someone in this case. So yeah, love it, man.
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. Well, cool. So, I mean, we'll stop there. There's obviously a lot more, but with time being so short here, let's get into the first impressions. So, Jason, I know you have a lot of topics on this. So when it comes to like really setting that first impression, how can everyone on this call today or webinar today make it legit?
Yeah. So if we go back to the objective again, we're trying to break the dynamic between seller who chases, buyer who runs away. So one of the strategies that's really good is to, when you get someone over the phone, we're going to immediately do what's called a pattern interrupt, and we're going to do something unexpected. So what people are not expecting you to do is ask them if it's okay if you continue the conversation. So in other words, if we think about what the experience is normally like when you pick up a cold call, usually it's, oh, hey, Jack, it's Jason with XYZ company. I was calling because, and you immediately get pitched.
Oh, yeah.
I was calling about this thing versus someone acknowledging, hey, Jack, I know I might have caught you in the middle of something. It's Jason, by the way. Do you mind if I take a sec to tell you the reason for my call and you can let me know if you want to keep talking?
Love it.
It's like, oh, wow. Like I'm asking for permission. So the goal in that first 60 seconds is 2 parts. One, let's get a permission-based opener going and ask for permission. And let's not do all of the normal things that sound super salesy that are going to make the buyer run away. So I was calling to talk to you about Mixmax. I wanted to inquire if sales engagement is top of mind. I wanted to see if you're interested in exploring our dialer platform. Have you heard of Mixmax before? How's your day? All of these are conversation stoppers. They don't get the person to lean in and have a conversation with you and start that dialogue. So avoid saying anything that you see on the screen here.
Yes. So what should they go into? Here's some good openers, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of examples. I really like the classic one. I gave you that example, earlier.
Yeah.
I also want to stress that, and you've been doing this for a long time too, there's no magic secret opening line.
No.
90% of it is what's comfortable to you that you can be really confident with. But I did a lot of work with Gong, and their opener was, hey, Jack, it's Jason with Outbound Squad. I don't suppose I caught you at the worst possible time, did I?
I love that.
And you kind of chuckle, smile a little bit. If you are someone that likes to have fun on the phone, which is not everyone's style, that's a good line for you. The starting with relevance is pretty cool too. Hey, Jack, I was calling. Looks like you're doing a bunch of hiring in Canada right now. Oh, by the way, it's Jason with Outbound Squad. Do you got a minute? Promise to be brief. So you start with whatever you would normally personalize in the first sentence of your email.
Yeah. Pack
that into the opener. Armand Farouk, give him a little shout out. He's our boy over at 30 Minutes to President's Club.
So good.
This one's pretty good. Hey, Heather, we work with a few other construction firms in Texas. It's Jason with Outbound Squad. Have you heard our name tossed around? So it's the have you heard our name tossed around opener. And the last one, this is not really my style, but I've coached a lot of reps on this one, and it works really, really well. It's called disarmingly blunt. Hey, Jack, it's Jason. You're going to hate me. I'm cold calling you, so feel free to hang up on me if you need to. I was just hoping I could get 30 seconds to explain the reason for my call.
Yeah, yeah. So funny story, and I haven't actually told you this, Jason, but we've actually been really experimenting with a lot of opening lines, and so
Oh, cool.
our prospects right now, and we've been doing this for a few months now. Our prospects are sellers just like us, so it's a blessing and a curse because they know what's coming. They already know. They're like, I mean, everyone does, but especially if you're calling into other salespeople, they definitely know. So we've been doing the disarmingly blunt and the wait, which one is it? Yeah, yeah, the gong, very similar to the gong opener. And those by far are the ones that open it up completely up. And
Oh,
ours is,
really?
basically like, hey, Jason, it's Jack. You're gonna hate me. This is a cold call. Feel free to hang up on me. I will not take offense, but was hoping to catch you for 30 seconds to explain why I was reaching out. Or like whatever your
Yeah.
hook is for what. And people, I think why they like it is it's like kind of owning that you are a seller. This is what I'm doing. Like,
Yep.
just I don't blame you if you want to hang up, but really opens it up. I don't know. I was not expecting it, but people tend to love it in our realm of who we're selling into, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, I love hearing that. You know what people like are really turned on to is someone that has social awareness around a situation.
Yeah,
So if I come into a room, let's say, and there's a bunch of people I don't know, and I say something that's really awkward, if I acknowledge that, oh, hey, that was kind of awkward, my bad, like that
yeah,
social awareness and that EQ, people really like that. And
yeah,
that's the principle really driving these lines is call out the elephant in the room. The elephant in the
yes,
room is you called this person and they didn't ask you to call them, and that's pretty annoying, actually.
yes, 100%. I actually too, you brought it up in the avoid. Yeah, so I wanted to come back here because I actually challenged and we caught this. I caught this, and it's hey Jason, it's Jack over at Mixmax. We're a sales and blah blah. It drove me nuts because I think what really happens is, again, the person doesn't care who you're calling from. They don't know your solution yet. So don't even mention it. I actually challenged them. Don't even mention Mixmax in that first like 30 seconds to a minute.
Yeah.
Talk about the problem of why you're calling. And so for us, it's, hey Jason, was calling you because other sales leaders are struggling with really fully leveraging their sales engagement solution across all the go-to-market teams. Curious to hear if you're running into this today and how you're approaching this. It
Yeah.
didn't mention Mixmax, didn't even mention anything. It just gets them to open up. And then obviously when it comes down to it, you can really input your solution and where it makes sense. But yeah, the more you can avoid talking about your solution and at least that first opener, the first impression, the better off you're going to be. Because now it's not about you, it's not about your solution, it's truly about them, why you're calling.
Yep. And this is what we're going to talk about next is you didn't pitch. Like you basically were able to talk about what you do through the lens of what other people like them are thinking about and struggling with.
Yes.
So I think that's another misconception is that you have to talk about your solution. The ultimate power move in a cold call, because you think about the power dynamic, uh,
Yeah.
if here is level, the person that is doing the chasing is of lower status than the person that is being chased. The way you level out that power dynamic is make them ask you what you do. It's a good thing if the prospect's like, wait, so Jack, who are you with again? What do you do?
Yep.
Now they're leaning in, they're paying attention. So get the
Yep.
prospect to ask you what you do. Don't tell them.
Yep.
Tell them what you do by speaking about their peers and what they're dealing with right now and what's a focus for them. And you're looking for alignment between their peers and what they're focused on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you talked about this really in the very beginning. And I gotta say, I was guilty of this. And I think one thing that I really struggled with when I was really calling is obviously we're all, when you get someone on the phone, especially right now, it's hard to connect with people. So when someone
It
actually
is.
answers, you're
Yeah.
super excited. You're probably nervous as all hell. And you're just trying to go like find the words. But I think it's even more important, match the energy of your prospect as best as
Yeah.
you can. Smile, obviously. Do not like, I don't know how you can call and not smile if someone picks up and you're talking to someone. That's like the best thing ever. But I think not being overly excited, but also just making sure that you're staying calm, cool, and collected. So then it really just has, I don't know, it really helps. Some of my better reps really have that, and I didn't have it toward the beginning of my career, and I'm jealous because it really helps them a lot in navigating those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And so I think here, let me share my screen one more time. But these are some of those that Jason was mentioning with avoiding certain pitches. So take some of these into account. And if you're running into these, we're all guilty of it at some point. I just mentioned mine with tonality and things like that. But we talked about this in our previous webinar, me and Jason, similar in an email. You want to limit the amount of I's. I want to help you. I wanted to call you today. I wanted to do this today. Whatever it may be, we're a solution. Avoid those as much as possible and get more in line with these. And I think you were just talking about it, Jason, but I'll let you wrap it up for sure.
Yeah. So again, do you mind flipping back one slide real quick?
Got you. Yeah, I got you.
When the prospect says yes to your permission-based opener, you're going to be so tempted to do this. Like, hey, I'm calling from the XYZ company and here's exactly what we do. Remember, the objective is to have genuine conversation and to not make the person run away. So do not talk about your solution. So let's give an example. If you could flip over to the next one, let's talk about what that kind of looks like and sounds like in action. So the second check mark there, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's from Navy SEALs and military people talk about that. And what you're going to be really tempted to do here is talk really fast. You're just going to slow it down. So this is what we call a reverse pitch or a priority drop. So if Jack was an HR leader, I'd say, Jack, thanks. I talk to quite a few HR leaders like yourself on a daily basis. And typically we hear a focus around one of two areas. One's really around employee engagement. So with the work from home policies in place, how do we engage our employees, make them feel like they're a part of the company, improve morale, et cetera. And the other thing is around reducing admin work. So your team is processing payroll across multiple countries, and it's just a ton of work to pull reporting, run payroll, et cetera. How does that compare to your world? So again, my solution helps with those two things, but I didn't say we help with those. I said, we work with a lot of people who care about these things. Do you care about it? And it's easier for someone to say, yeah, this resonates with me. I'm also concerned about what my peers are concerned about versus this pitch. Me saying yes to your pitch, it is a way higher effort for me to commit to that and agree to that. There's more friction in agreeing to your pitch
100%.
than what my peers agree with. Social proof theory,
yes.
Really at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really just builds on the story of why you're calling them. So talk about that. Like we always talk about it, like some of the most effective sellers, they're really good storytellers. And that's what you want to really try to do. Build that up in that first, impression and what you're really trying to get from them and engage with them. Talk about that, build that social proof. And I think that's some of the most effective ways that you can really elevate your cold call openers, but even more engaging further with your prospects. And again, there's a common theme here, y'all. The more you can avoid talking about your solution and addressing your solution head on, the better off you're going to be. Talking about it, talk about the pains and solutions you're getting into solving. That's what it really is about. And that's what you really want to try to do. It's tough, it's challenging, but trust me, it is possible for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It requires you to really think about, I think in sales, the part that's really hard is you have to meet the prospect in their world first. So everything's got to be through their context. The mutual language that you have, the universal language between buyer and seller is priorities, goals, and then problems. So what do I want to accomplish on a daily basis? And what are the problems that get in the way of that? Your solution helps with that. But your solution is not something that the buyer knows about because they're not in your business every day. So we have to meet them where they're at and speak to their priorities and their problems. And then once we get alignment around like, hey, these are also the same things that our customers care about, then we can talk about our solution. So we have to meet them in their world first.
Yeah. I think when meeting them in their world, you have to do your research. So many reps. And again, this is another thing that I think everyone has run into. We just go into the, oh, I know my solution so well. I know my competitors really well. I'm going to call. Hold on. Before you do that, do your research ahead of time. Who are you calling? What's the persona? What's the things they're running into right now? Because that's really what it takes. And then also industry, know their company. I think I've actually seen a post from you, Jason, where like some of the worst calls that come across is when the seller knows nothing about their company at all. There's this confusion that comes up, but also that's going to happen. So if that does happen, own it. Like, again, we talked about it. Own that confusion, own that mistake and, recover from it. But I think if you do it ahead of time and just do your research, basic research, it's going to elevate it.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Love it. All right, getting into overcoming objections. So obviously there's a lot of different objections. We're definitely not going to touch on every single one on today. We only have so much time, but there definitely are a lot of common objections that we come across. And I think, Jason, you were mentioning before, and I loved how you were positioning it. There's two types of objections that really every objection falls into. Can you touch on those more?
Yeah. So objection handling is interesting because our objective with objection handling, it's kind of too hard to say those two words at the same time.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, is our objective is not to handle the objection. Again, it's genuine dialogue, same as a cold call. We're not going to handle every objection. So the goal is, how can I just have real talk with the person? Because the first type of objection is the instinctive kind of objection. It's when I'm walking in the mall and I see Jack out of the corner of my eye walking up to me, I'm like, oh shit, I just ignore him. You know what I mean? And I look the other way. I don't even think about it. You could literally be giving me money and I would walk by you, and if you try to engage me, I would either not make eye contact or say not interested. I wouldn't even think twice about it. And that's instinctive. So the instinctive objections are not interested, not right now. I'm about to hop into a meeting. You caught me in the middle of something. It's a reflex that the buyer has. Calculated objections are a little different. So calculated objections are, I'm in the store and I'm looking for a shirt, and the person asks me what I need help with. And I tell them, hey, the type of shirt that I'm looking for, a flannel, I guess I don't wear flannel, but the flannel, you guys don't sell flannel shirts here. So you don't have what I need. It's a real objection. I put some thought into it, etc. And for you guys on the phone, when we get those objections, they sound a lot like, we already have a solution. You know what? We don't really have budget until Q1, yada, yada, yada. So the instinctive objection, those instinctual ones that come out, what the buyer needs is acknowledgement around the interruption. That's the objection that you need to handle. It's really they're objecting to being interrupted.
Yeah.
The calculated objections, really what they need to understand is, I think I'm already taken care of. So what value am I going to get from setting up a conversation with you? So in other words, this 30-minute meeting you want to set up with me, am I going to learn something from that interaction? Or are you just going to like demo and show your solution? Am I going to learn what my peers, how they're handling these problems right now? Like, what's the value that I'm going to get? So those are the two types of objections, instinctive and then calculated.
Yeah. We definitely, I think one of the more common ones that we're getting we always get hit with competitor. Hey, we're using competitor A. We're good. We're set. Yeah. And I think what Jason talked about, I think a lot, and I've been actually victim when sellers call me, some of the ones that I do that. Like if I feel like I'm covered on all bases, I don't want to hop on a meeting, like obviously, but I don't know what I don't know. So I think a lot of reps, when I get cold calls, they don't do the best job of addressing what I just told them. And then, going from there, they kind of just get right into their pitch immediately or whatever. And then I'm already tuned out. Like I just said, I'm on a competitor. You didn't address what I just said. You didn't hear me. You didn't hear me out. So hear your prospects out. Whatever objection they give you, address it. So for us, it's, hey, we're using competitor. Hey, that's awesome to hear. You're already using a solution. That means you've really taken the time, put in all the resources and time, effort to make sure you're covered. Other sales leaders are sharing that they love this feature that they're getting from competitor A or whatever, but really they're struggling with fully leveraging it. How is your team approaching this today? So in a way, I addressed that objection. I even said great, which, again, the more you can address it and say, hey, that's awesome. Because to me, I think one thing too, if you do get hit with that competitor objection, like they're using something, two things that are really good from there. You just got confirmation that they're using something. Boom. I think that's awesome. I would take that as a manager. Good job. You did what you needed to do. But also we now know they have budget allocated for it. So boom, done. Now it's really a good lead that you can work with, no matter if they're already using a competitor. So that's like something that we always work on to really make sure. But what comes from that is, again, doing your research. So I think I tell my team this, but Jason, I saw you posted about it, I think a couple weeks ago, is like knowing and fully understanding your competitors and the pros and cons to your competitors and even
Yeah.
us as well, like, so our solution as well, because then that's going to make you way more credible and also be a
Yeah.
legit seller, knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the framework there is greet the objection. So the buyer's expecting you to like basically argue with them. And that's what a lot of sales reps do. They'll kind of like, oh, you're using XYZ solution. Well, don't you know that they're really bad for this? And it's like, no. Greet and then respond. So I love that, right? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's okay. Got it. Hey, that's exactly why I called. That's another great line. I didn't make that one up. Like, I love that response to an objection. We're using XYZ competitor. Hey, that's exactly why I called. That's great that you guys are using that. And the pros and
Yep.
cons approach I love. I'm wondering for Mixmax, I don't know if you guys have tried this. Like one of the things I see with your competitors is that account executives, getting them to self-source more pipeline is a really big deal right now. And you
Huge.
know, with your competitors, what every one of my clients complains about is that oftentimes their account executives don't even log into those tools. They're paying for them. And the account executives have such a tough time using those tools that they don't even open them up. They do it
No,
manually. And that
super
can be kind
manual.
of interesting, right? It's like, hey, Jack, awesome, you're taken care of. I am curious. Oftentimes what we hear is like, hey, this is a best in class tool. It's really awesome that you guys are using it. Sometimes what we hear is that, with account executives and getting them to self source and prospect more, is that the tool is a bit complicated and the adoption is really low for account
Yeah,
executives. They just end up sending emails manually, making calls off their cell phone. What's your experience been?
I like that. Yeah. That's like that's actually something that we hear a lot. That's a really common thing that we hear. And again, very similar. We're talking about obviously Mixmax, but that there's always going to be common objections. So the more that you could have those prepared and ready, and I think that's one thing on us as sellers is identify what are the common things I'm running into. So take some self-reflection. Like what is some of the common
Yeah.
things I'm running into right now? So then you're prepared. You're better prepared for those. But I think actually I'm gonna call out Kim Nguyen because she posted a really good question. Like, does the assumption play work here? I assume everything's going well with your competitor. So I will say, Kim, I'm gonna talk because that's a really good one with this topic alone, is we've experimented with that because we all like majority of the companies we're talking to right now, they have something in play. Very rarely do they not have something. So we're always having that uphill battle of trying to say, hey, we're doing things differently. We're changing the game, like so many different things you could say. But I think going into that assumption mode of, hey, I assume, since you've been using outreach or any other solution out there that's in our realm, that your team is using it really well, like 10 out of 10, if you were to say. We've actually done that. Like hey, scale 1 to 10. It sounds like it's a perfect 10. Do I have that right? And kind of asking for them to validate it. You'd be surprised. People will not say, well, no. Like, if it was a 10 out
Yeah.
of 10, no one says that. So I think assuming, Kim, is actually a really good play for that as well.
Yeah, it would be kind of like okay, it's the same print, just so people understand the principle behind what you just did, is that you're using flattery in a way that gets a real response from someone. It would be no different than like I pride myself on being really self-disciplined. And if Jack, you were like, yeah, so Jason, like you're pretty self-disciplined, right? You probably never miss a workout. You're like, no, I miss them all the time, dude. I
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
reschedule my Orange Theory workouts,
That's
whatever.
such a good way of putting it.
It's
Yeah.
like that flattery and making the assumption that they're already a 10 out of 10 and like having them correct you.
Yep.
That's a really great strategy. I've never actually really tried that before.
We've done it and it
Yeah,
works like way more than you would think. We've done the scale. We've also we've just said it. So, hey, you've been on outreach for a while. Like, kudos to y'all. That's really hard to do. So it sounds like your team is set, like no issues at all. Nothing.
yeah,
And then there's always something there. If they really know the tool, they'll tell you it really.
yeah,
So that's one thing. And I think another thing too that we've experimented with is if you're in the same situation that my team is, where you're calling into a lot of teams and companies that already have a solution, address that. Assume
yeah,
that they're already using something like, hey, I expect your team to be on a solution already. That's awesome that you confirmed that for me. The reason for my call wasn't to convince you to switch right now. That's not my goal here. What I'm wanting to do is other sales leaders, they're saying this is a struggle they're running into. Wanted to see if some of the key things we're doing with company A when they ran into that same issue would be really relevant for your team. Do you have 20 minutes and we can dive into it? Again, if it doesn't work out, you don't agree,
yeah.
no worries. At least you checked it out. That's another really
Yeah.
good approach because that's all you're wanting to do. And I think addressing that, because sometimes, you know, I told in the very beginning, Jason, I was in advertising. It was one call close. I am not in that realm anymore. No, definitely not in this market.
No.
It takes like, way longer than a day. So that's the realistic point of a call. You're not wanting them to buy right here, right now. You're just wanting to learn from them. And so, ask for that time. Ask for that if it makes sense for them, if it really is something they're struggling with. And then I think that's a really good one. So calling out the elephant in the room, hey, I'm not wanting you to buy right now. That's not my goal here. I want to just learn from you and then kind of going from there.
Yeah. I love that.
Love it. Cool. So the next one, follow up best practices. So, all right, Jason, we're in a cold call. Things are going well. Now, I think my reps, I've talked about my reps a lot. Shout out to anyone who's on here. But I think this is one thing that every rep struggles with at some point is when a conversation's going well, just gearing up and asking for it, asking for the meeting. For me, when it comes to doing all of the things we just talked about, building rapport, impression, all that, this is where it really counts. So for me, one thing that I always keep in mind, y'all, when it comes to follow up or just asking for the meeting, I think when it comes to it, you have to do it at some point. Time is valuable. You're calling people, you're calling them out of the blue. So keep a timer in your head. I mean, obviously, if you're using a dialer, you're going to have a timer going, but have a timer going where if it's approaching 3 minutes or even more than that, you're getting close to the time where they're probably going to go at some point, and you're not going to have time to get through all the questions of confirming the meeting, asking for it. So keep that timer going. That's something that I've done with my team, and it's really helped actually. Funny enough, do you have any like best practices for that, Jason? Like
Yeah.
when, I'm using a self timer reference, but something similar to that?
Yeah. So we've talked about the intro, like how to get that first 60 seconds. We've sort of talked about the middle, like how to engage the prospect, get some problems. Now it's time to say goodbye. And the biggest mistake you can make is letting the prospect determine when the call ends. The way you, again, level out the power dynamic is you're the one that says goodbye. So I think
Yep.
the easiest way to transition is one of two things that you could do. You could say, hey, Jack, you mind if I make a quick suggestion? And you just do that after they answer the last question. And usually people will give you kind of a weird answer like, yeah, what's up? Everything that you shared around self-sourcing is a really big top of mind topic that VPs of sales at Gong, Medallia, Zoom, other folks that we work with are prioritizing right now. And I'd love to share with you how we're helping them with that. Do you have your calendar handy? And
Love
just
that.
go straight into scheduling the meeting. So you can ask,
Yep.
could I make a suggestion? Or another way is just to summarize what you've heard. Hey, so what I've heard is XYZ. Do you mind if I make a quick suggestion? Cool. And you just transition right into the close. You want to end the call on a high note, not a low note. You don't want to feel like the call is running out of steam and momentum before asking for the meeting. Do it at its highest point.
Like that a lot. Yes. So and I think that's even better than how I put it, because everyone knows when a conversation's going well. There's a
Yeah.
reason we're in sales. We're all people. We like talking to people. We can tell when we can read people fairly well. So when that conversation is at the peak, that's your call. Do it. Sometimes it can come. I've seen really good calls come from less than a minute. I've seen calls come from over 5 minutes. There's really no average amount of time that works, but when you feel it's a good call and it's really going well, that's where it comes in. Go for it. I think another thing that I do too, I like that you use like, hey, I have a question. Can I ask it? Right. I like that. The other thing I've had my team do is like, instead of just, hey, can we set 30 minutes up tomorrow? The one thing I've done is kind of take them along. So like, if it really goes well, hey, Bob, this conversation has gone really well. I think we're really learning from each other. I think there's a lot our solution can offer. Let's do this. Let's set up some time, extra time, let's say 30 minutes tomorrow. We'll walk through this more with my account executive that can really walk you through the solution. And then if you agree with everything we show you, we'll follow up accordingly and go from there. How's that sound? Sound fair? So you're kind of bringing them along instead of like throwing it all on them, like tossing the ball in their court. Like you're bringing them along
Yeah.
that journey. And I like that method a lot because now like you're in it together. And I think that's the really key
Yeah.
part, especially my SDRs out there. That's what you want to do. Build that rapport
Yeah.
up to where you're in it with them. Like it's not like, hey, the power dynamic. We're in this together sort of thing. I love that strategy.
Well, and just the confidence that you had there too with that.
Yeah.
It's the
Confidence wins.
confidence is like you're asking a question, but you're kind of not at the same time. You're giving the prospect a light push.
Yes. 100%. Heather Mason, I came back to yours because this is something our team gets hit with a lot. My team runs in, her message, my team runs into getting asked to send an email a lot once they've, gotten past the intro and you're going through it. Any advice there? So my quick thoughts here is we get this a lot. So if you get hit with an email, I think a lot of reps will just say, hey, yes, sure, I'll send you an email. Talk soon. Don't do that. Until they actually get off the call, take that time to know exactly what they want out of that call. So, hey, can you send me an email? I'll see if it makes sense. Hey, sounds good. Happy to send over any information you need. To be honest, I have everything ready to go. I wanted to make sure I get everything right. What would you expect in that email from me after? What would you want to see in there? So get them to tell you exactly what they want. And especially if you've gotten to that point where they're telling you to send an email, they'll tell you. You would be surprised us. It's like, hey, send me a document or whatever you have of your comparison from tool to tool. What do you have that offers? That is going to put you in a much better spot. And then actually, too, another thing to add in is, hey, I'll send you that email. Make sure that all is accounted for. I'll follow up with you on Monday, same time. Expect a call from me. Does that sound good? Get them to agree to that. So then they're going to be expecting your call to follow up on the information you sent to it. That's another really good tip that I have.
Yeah, love it. Let them know, hey, I'm happy to send it, just like you did there. And then essentially what you're doing is getting more information. One thing you could also do there is you should know the people that you call, you should know generally what their typical priorities and challenges are. So it's like, hey, Jack, so I can get the right info to you. Typically the number one thing I'm hearing from VPs right now is they want their account executives to do more self-sourcing. They got to, create less reliance on inbound and marketing. How does that compare to what you're focused on with your team right now? Get them talking. And then don't be afraid to just ask for the meeting right there. Well, how about this? A lot of the material I have is pretty generic. And to be honest, probably won't be as helpful as just us hopping on a call. And I'd love to set up something with my account executive, Jack, who's an expert at this, and to run you through it. Do you have your calendar handy? And just go in and ask for the meeting again. Worst thing that's going to happen is they say no, but what's the likelihood they respond to your email?
100%. I think Mike, I'll give another shout out in the chat to Mike. I'm going to pronounce your last name wrong. I apologize. Cherubi, I think. He said the same thing. I think his liner is really good. I can send you an email, but what I typically see a lot with emails is that it typically leads to more questions than answers. Highly recommend we get something on the calendar, 15, 20 minutes, to walk through. I love that. Love that. Kind of just addressing like, you're going to have questions. I know you are. Why not just set up some time right now? Actually, I wanted to call this out too. For AEs, like y'all know that your solution really well, but this is also for you as well. But this is more for SDRs. If you're an SDR, you do not have to be an expert on your tool. I actually prefer you're not, because it puts you in the driver's seat of if you have a prospect and they ask you a lot of technical questions or just any question about your solution, frankly, flip that into a meeting. Hey, that's a really good question. I'm not actually 100% sure on that, but my AE does, my product specialist does. Hey, since that's really top of mind right now, I want to make sure we cover it. Let's set up some time for today, just 30 minutes, and we'll run through it really quick. How's that sound? Yeah. And then once they agree to it, hopefully, then get them to confirm it on the call. Jason and I talked about this. If you're not doing this, I'm telling you, it's going to change the game for you. Until you disconnect that call, like we said, we want to end the call. We want to be in control. But before you officially send over that calendar invite, get them to accept it on the call. This is tough, I will say. It's going to take some practice. So you got to be quick to send them an invite. Time zones are tricky, but I'm telling you, if you can get really good at not only getting them to agree to a meeting, but get them to accept it on the call, you're set. No more, miscommunication through email, delay in conversation. You're already set. The meeting's on the calendar. You're good and ready for it to come.
Yep. Love it. The old triple confirmation. Confirm the agenda, confirm the calendar invite, and then let them know how you're going to confirm the meeting if it's multiple days out.
Yep.
I'll give you another little pro tip, and I know we got to bounce, is texting. So say, hey, Jack, you're going to be meeting with Rita. How about I send you a text with you and Rita in it, just so you have her information in case you need it. Is
Yep.
this the best number to text? Yeah, cool. Awesome. You open up a group text right there and you're setting your AE up pretty good as well.
I like that a lot. Texting, it's a tricky one, but if you can get them to confirm, hey, yeah, text is great, actually, I prefer that, then you're good. And actually, like Jason said, sets up your AE to where now they have the texting ability, which a lot of teams have a lot of good success getting deals to close because they're texting their prospects. So if you can do that as an SDR early on, man, you're in the right, you're doing it right. All right, so like Jason said, got to know a lot of good topics. We addressed some questions along the way. Time really flew by, but hopefully this was really helpful. We really enjoyed it. Again, like I said, we're going to be sending a recording of the webinar and also the slides that we went through to each and every one of you for attending. Even if you didn't attend, you're still going to get it. No worries. There will be a survey coming out. If Mixmax looked cool, let us know. If you want to learn more about Outbound Squad, hit up Jason. They're doing cool things over there. Be a part of the journey. Jason, been a pleasure, like always. Can't wait until we do it again. And yeah, anything else you want to add before we hop?
This is not Jack's full-time job to host webinars, and he's crushing it. So let's give Jack a little shout out, dude. Awesome webinar, man.
Appreciate you as always. Appreciate all of you. Again, Rita, thank you. Again, shout out Rita and everyone. Happy selling. Let's go crush Q4. Talk to y'all soon.
Later, everyone. See ya.
Bye.